Favor of saying how much I appreciate working with Christian. The intention of everybody involved with Forward, and you heard these words if you were with us last year or at any time in between, is that we're building something that is viable and that is durable, right? This is not supposed to be a flash in the pan. We're planting seeds. And to do that, you need the kind of leadership that Christian has provided. He is a natural-born conciliator. He's a person who brings people together. In a time, I don't have to tell you, when most of people who aspire to leadership or claim leadership are all about dividing and conquering, dividing and inflaming. And Christian takes the exact opposite approach, which is to bring people together. So thank you for that, and delighted that you will be continuing on as chair. I also want to thank Ben. Ben clearly didn't have the fun part of the work today. But again, if you think about building an organization that has viability and durability, it is really important to get the administrative aspects right and to refine them over time as you learn from your experience. And that's what Ben provided for us this morning. So thank you. I also want to say thank you to our statewide candidates, Eric Settle and Chris Foster, who are both here. We're going to be joined by some other endorsed candidates later in the day. We are building an incredibly impressive group that speaks to the values, embodies the values of Forward in who they are, in the way they campaign, in the backgrounds that they bring, the bios that they bring. And I think voters, who the vast majority of voters in Pennsylvania have obviously never heard of Forward yet, but as they come to learn about these candidates, who they are, what they stand for, they're going to know who we are as a party and as a movement. So what I was asked to talk about was messaging. And what I thought I would do is just run very quickly through some of the sort of frequently asked questions. If you're out and you're talking to people about what Forward is. Now, you've heard probably some of this before, you may have read it on the website, but I thought there are themes that recur in conversations that you have when you first bring up Forward that I thought it bears kind of reinforcing here today for just a couple of minutes. So let me just run through a few. Okay, so I say to somebody, I've become active with the Forward Party in Pennsylvania. I'm helping build this new institution. And I get this question all the time. Really? A third party? I mean, come on. Third parties are fringes, or third parties they just don't work out, right? They can't get traction. There hasn't been a really successful new party, a third party in the United States since, well, 1856, when the Republican Party was created. So how can you think that this is going to be real in the way that the Republican Party became real, a century and a half ago? So the answers that I try to give to people go something like this. The first thing I say is, look, forget about what you think can happen or can't happen. Let's just talk about what should happen. Let's start with that. Are you satisfied, right now, are you satisfied with the choices that you have between the Republicans and the Democrats? Now, of course, you'll find some people who are. There are some very loyal, passionate Republicans and some very loyal, passionate Democrats. But they are not, by any means, the whole electorate. In fact, they're probably somewhere between 20 and 25% of the electorate on each side, so somewhere between 40 and 50% of the electorate, which means that 50 to 55% of the electorate, or 50 to 60% of the electorate, are not satisfied. And of course, that's registered in polls across the country. So chances are, just statistically, chances are that as you ask somebody that question, are you satisfied, you personally, chances are they're going to say no. They're going to say, I'm not. Okay, well, if you're not satisfied, then don't you think it's a good idea to try to have more choices? Almost everybody acknowledges that. Even people who are partisans in Republican and Democratic circles will generally stay with you at least that far along the train. They'll say, yeah, more choices wouldn't be a bad thing, and there's certainly nothing wrong with trying to get there. The second thing I say to people is, again, very obvious, very intuitive. We all learn it when we're children, and that is, nothing grows if nobody plants the seed, right? Or the proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You just remind people that just because the objective is big, just because the objective may take time, doesn't mean that it's not achievable. It just means you got to put one foot in front of the other and you got to build. And so I say to people, forward is here for the long term. This isn't about November. This isn't about next November. This is about all the Novembers to come. We want to make a fundamental change that is structural. And in order to do that, we're going to take the first step, and then the second, and the third. Do you want to be a part of that? Some people will say no. Some people will say, well, I don't necessarily want to be an active part of it, but I support it. I support the idea, right? And I might help out in a polling booth, or I might help out with a couple of dollars a donation, or I might help out with a signature. The third thing is, I just give them some facts about where we already are in a very short time. We are, as Andrew Yang likes to say all the time, already the third largest party in the United States by budget. Now, as he also says, there's a kind of a drop-off between number 2 and number 3 in the size, but we are the third largest. Can't deny it. It's undeniable. There is a momentum that's already been created. And as our candidates reflect, it's people coming to us who used to be Republicans. It's people coming to us who used to be Democrats. It's people coming to us who've always been independents, who've always had an independent streak. It is an amalgamation of those different strains that I think a lot of people, this 50 to 60% of the electorate that isn't hyper-partisan, are very excited about. They're very excited about the idea that people can meet that way and not just be sort of in their separate tent. We are also, I say to people, not only a party organization. We are that, and we're building that, but it's not all we are. We're also a movement for political reform. And our strategy of affiliating with current Republican and current Democratic candidates and office holders proves that, and it allows us, potentially, certainly something that we have as an objective, it allows us to impact governance much sooner than will happen in terms of electing a lot of people who are forward party members to office, right? So again, we have a long-term strategy and we're building toward it along 2 paths. One path is the actual party and its own candidates, and the other path is by having like-minded people who share our values in both the Republican and Democratic Party affiliate with us. Well, what does that mean in practice? It means in practice we could have, in much less time, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, not many years, we could have fulcrums in the Pennsylvania legislature, maybe even in the United States Congress, of people who are affiliated with Forward, who share our values, and yes, they still call themselves either Republicans or Democrats, but they govern by a set of principles to which Forward ascribes. Now, you don't need a lot. We all know, right? The Pennsylvania House of Representatives has a majority of 1 vote, right? The United States Congress has a majority of 4 votes currently. The United States Senate has a majority of a couple votes. And this is true in other parts of the country as well. The country is so, nearly evenly divided in many places between Republicans and Democrats that if you have just a few people who say, I'm going to put this set of principles ahead of my party affiliation, they can govern. They can control the outcome of votes. And if you control the outcome of votes, you can make real reforms. So that's the first point. The second point is, the second question I get all the time, again, you guys have heard this, is, aren't you just a spoiler? Isn't that just, aren't you just really kind of like shilling for one side of the other or the other secretly? So a couple of things I think you can say in response to that. One is, we have deliberately stayed out of races where we don't believe that our presence in that race would help promote our ideals. Most importantly, there is no forward party candidate for president of the United States this year, right? Is that something the party might have been able to do? Probably. But it was a decision made not to do it because we didn't see how doing it would actually help advance the ideals that we believe in. So we are staying out of that. There is no forward party for Senate in Pennsylvania right now. Same principle. That if we had done that, and that candidate had gotten a few percent of the vote perhaps, it might have swayed the impact, and we might not know which way it would sway, but it might have swayed the impact in a way that did not advance the ideals that we believe in. So we've stayed out of those races, and where we've gone into races, the treasurer's race and the attorney general race in particular, it's because we know that the presence of our candidates there is going to advance the values that we believe in. And I'm going to let the two candidates talk more about that later on, obviously. Third question. What's your platform? Oh, you don't have a platform, exactly. Why don't you have a platform? What does it mean to not have a platform? So the first thing I think it's really important to say to people is that this idea that a party is a rigid set of ideological precepts, right? And a rigid set of policy priorities, that's what a party is really, really new. It's really, really new. I used to be chief of staff to United States Senator Arlen Specter. That wasn't yesterday, but it wasn't, generations ago. And Specter was a pro-choice Republican senator. And while he was a senator, Pennsylvania had a pro-life Democratic governor, Governor Casey. Now, when I tell young people that I used to work for a Republican senator who was pro-choice while we had a Democratic governor who was pro-life, they look at me like and say, "Oh, this guy really is old. He just mixed up all the words in that sentence." That's not possible. And I say, no. Actually, that's really what we had, right? Both parties, not only sort of de facto, but both parties in principle were pledged not that long ago to what was called Big Tent strategy. The idea of building coalitions, that the party was a coalition, and that coalition could include people who had different opinions. That changed, and we sorted it out so that every Republican is to the right of every Democrat, right? And you have these litmus test issues. You can't be a Republican if you don't believe this. You can't be a Democrat if you don't believe that. It's sorted out that way. Well, forward is, in that sense, restoring the historical American tradition of being a Big Tent and of trying to build coalitions. We have the view, and I think this is crucial to remember, that a party is a coalition, not a cult. Just say that to your friends. All right, next question. Isn't the presidential race really the only thing that matters? And if you're not in the presidential race, what the hell are you doing? My answer to that is 1,000, a million, a zillion times no, okay? Every office matters. And the truth is that the down ballot offices, including ones that most people don't even know exist, shape the quality of our lives. They affect day-to-day things in our lives. You know, in times of great crisis, particularly foreign policy crisis, the president is the most important thing in our lives, or could be. But that's, thank God, rare. Our presidents don't, in fact, run the American economy. They get credit for when it's good. They get blamed for when it's bad. They actually don't run the economy. And they don't run the world, much as some of them think they do or should, but they don't. Of course, presidents are important. But the offices, the local offices and the state offices decide things that affect us every single day. And that's our focus. And that's how we're building from the bottom up. And I think when you tell people that, even if they still don't know who their state rep is or, you know, what a township auditor does, they get it. They get it intuitively. And nobody's told them that. Nobody's told them that for a long time. So 1,000 times no. It's not only the presidential race that matters. And then, you know, part of that question is a fear about this year. a fear about the stakes of this election, a fear about what may happen in November. And I will, speaking totally personally, I have a lot of fears about November and about what comes immediately after it. I think our country could be in for a serious and difficult time. By the way, regardless of the outcome, because whoever wins, there's going to be tens of millions of Americans who hate that result, really hate that result. So I think we're in for potentially a tough time. But you know what? Again, thank you, Christian, for showing how old I am. I've been through a lot of elections. And I know that 25, there will be elections. 26, there will be elections. 28, there will be elections, including another presidential election. The clock does keep turning. The calendar does keep turning. The world will not be decided on November the 5th, 2024. And I say to people who sort of express this to me, like, well, why are you working on that when there's this giant thing? Yes, you have to take care of the pot that's boiling over, on your stove, but that's not the only thing in your house. And if you're not thinking about the fact that maybe you want to fix the roof, and maybe you want to change the carpeting, and if you're not thinking about what comes next, then you won't be ready for what comes next. Forward is getting ready for what comes next, and we're helping to prepare for what it is. Next one. What are we for? What are we for? Well, I think it's really important to say, and you can talk about the statement of values and principles, and it's all really, really vital stuff. But to me, the thing that separates us more than anything else is that we are about hope rather than fear. This year's national campaign, between now and November the 5th, you are going to hear almost nothing but negativity from the two legacy parties. Each side is going to try to scare the American people and inflame them to believe that the election of the other side is catastrophic. That is the technique. That is the platform, regardless of what they say about taxes or any other issue. The real platform of each of the two legacy parties this year is that the other side is going to destroy the United States of America. We don't believe that the country is that fragile, or that the people are that polarized, or that the people are that poisonous. We believe in the possibility of hope, redemption, and a future that's better than the past. In the depths of the Civil War, few steps from here, really, Lincoln spoke about the United States as the last best hope for mankind on earth. In the depths of the Depression, FDR talked about the only thing we had to fear was fear itself. And the two most effective and important political figures of my lifetime, of modern times, were Reagan and Obama. Now, they came from opposite political parties, and they came from opposite sides of the political spectrum, right? But what did Reagan and Obama share in common that made them so popular for so many Americans? The answer is that they both ran on hope. They both ran on a future that was better than the past. Reagan talked about morning in America. It's the phrase he's most remembered for. And Obama's slogan was, yes, we can. Forward, I think, is in the tradition of American optimism. It's right there in the name. And that's what I think we can most connect with people about. I think there is a hunger for that kind of optimism. I have people tell me all the time, when I watch the news, I really believe like the country's falling apart. I believe the world's ending. And then I walk outside, and you know what? Like, it's sunny. And the economy, it may not be perfect, and it's certainly not perfect for everyone, but it's pretty good, and it's moving, And there are terrible wars happening in the world, but there are always terrible wars happening somewhere. And the reality is that as serious as our problems are, the world isn't ending. And it will only end if we all come to believe that. It will only end if we come to accept the negativity, accept the polarization and the poison. Forward's the antidote to that. And when I say that to people, they say, I'm in. So please go say that to people. Thank you.